Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Blabbering Mimic podcast with me, your host, co-host, one of the hosts, DM number one. I am Kris, and I
And
am with.
I jumped
Oh,
in. Sorry.
we messed it up.
No conflict. I'm DM2 Adam. Hello.
Hello. So, how has your day been?
It's been pretty good. I've been working on projects, not D&D related projects, but projects nonetheless, which will all be revealed in time.
I, as one of the people who know what the project is, I am looking forward to said project.
Yay. That's nice to hear, because normally it's just one of those things of where I mention I'm doing something, people are like, "Oh, cool." Anyway,
Yeah, I totally get that.
yeah. However, oh, cool. Anyway, D&D.
D&D. That's that out the way. Let's get onto D&D.
Yes,
So,
the important stuff.
we are... This is episode 6. We're 6 episodes in. We've been doing this for 6 weeks. 7 weeks if you include the week we took off because of
Yeah,
the fucking heat.
yeah. It was hell.
And it came to my attention that we haven't done a beginner's guide yet.
That is a very good point, because we were beginners once.
We
were beginners where you were a player and I was a DM. And
Yeah.
I'd never even seen D&D before, other than Critical Role, like I mentioned previously. And I was like, I'm going to be Matt Mercer. But that didn't work out that way at all. But yeah, we haven't even touched upon doing a beginner's guide for people.
So I thought at the end of last week, and I brought it up to you, I think it would be good if we did an episode, maybe our episodes were about an hour long, maybe half an hour on player and half an hour on Dungeon Master. The basics to getting started.
Yeah, that is definitely a good shout. Something that we can do.
Now, I haven't used D&D Beyond, so most of my experience that I'm talking about will be pen and paper. But
Yeah,
to my knowledge, I think it can more or less translate to D&D Beyond.
it definitely does. I mean, D&D Beyond is very hand-holdy for new people, and it's great for if you want to get in and start. So my nephew and my older brother, they're both now very interested in D&D. It's kind of cool to see, considering they used to make fun of me for playing it a little while ago. But they're both now, like, again, they started watching Critical Role, the pair of them, and they've both made characters on D&D Beyond. Granted, I needed to explain a few things to them, because my nephew made a paladin with all of his stats in dexterity and no charisma whatsoever, and my brother made a ranger who has no dexterity and a lot of other things. So D&D Beyond is good, but it doesn't explain the basics like that. Or from what I've seen, it doesn't cater to brand new players. So, going from a player's perspective as a new player, honestly, you're probably going to need to spend a bit of money. You're going to need to get that player's handbook, because that thing is a lifeline and a godsend.
The PHB has so much in it for new players, such as if you want to make a rogue, it'll have the quick build for a rogue, which is like, this is what your main stat is. This is where you want the majority of your points.
Definitely, yeah. And it explains everything. The beauty of the player's handbook is it's laid out wonderfully as well. I never used to think that. I used to think it's all over the place. Why am I looking different places for different things? And then I found the Cyberpunk book, and well, I can now say the player's handbook is beautiful. Even DMs, get yourself a player's handbook, because you're going to want to look into that.
Yeah,
It explains.
as the dungeon master, players will ask you questions.
and you will need to know the answers.
And
Or at
also,
least
it's got all the spells in, so if a player tries to bullshit you with a spell, you can always check.
definitely something that needs to be done. And you and me were big fans of rules as interpreted over rules as written. So if
Yeah.
a player explains something and maybe they've read it wrong and you think it's cooler, go with it.
Yes.
But that's not what we're talking about right
No.
now. Yeah, so the player's handbook itself, it building a character, that's going to be your first thing. Now, you can do it one of two ways, or at least I think you do it one of two ways. You can decide what class you want to play. You can look through all the classes, decide what class you want to play, and then build your character around that. It's even got options in there just to give you backstory. You don't
Yes.
even need to come up with one yourself, or you can come up with your own backstory and then pick the class that fits that character's backstory. But it goes in a nice order, so it will give you a table. It has different methods of rolling your statistics. So you have 6 main stats. You will have strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Did I miss any off there?
No, that's all 6.
Cool. So there's multiple different ways of picking your stats. The one we like to do, we roll dice. So you get 4d6, you roll them, you take the lowest away, add them up, write it down. That's one stat. You can allocate it to where you want later. Normally we do a set of 7, and then you can get rid of one of those numbers that you've rolled. And then there's your 6 stats, allocate them how you want.
I as a DM like to do 2 sets of 7.
Mhm.
So
Same.
you'll roll 2 sets of 7. You'll drop 1 from each that you don't like. Well, hold on, let me start again. You'll roll 2 sets of 7.
Yeah.
You'll pick one of those sets which you prefer the numbers for, and then you'll drop one of the rolls from there. So you're left with the 6. Then you allocate them as you see fit in the stats you want them in.
Yeah, definitely. There's a standard array. So the book actually gives you 6 stats, 6 numbers, and it says you can put them wherever you want. And then there is point buy. I'm not 100% sure on how point buy works because I've never used it myself. I think you have like a pool of like
like when you're playing an RPG, say Fallout, for example, and you've got to do your special stats.
yes,
And you're given like an extra 10 points to put where you want in your special stats. I think that's what it is. It's like here's this many points. Distribute them evenly where you want them.
Yes, yeah.
And there is one more that I know of, which is rolling 3d6 and just going with whatever that is.
Going with them, yeah, but that's just kind of like a less fun version of ours.
To me, the most common one that I know is roll 4, take the lowest away.
Yeah, definitely. That's the one that I've used since starting, and that's the one I know most people tend to use as well for stats. It all depends on your DM and how your DM wants to run the game.
Yes,
now,
it is down to DM discretion.
Yeah.
A lot of this will be done at what is called a session 0.
Yeah.
Which is where the group gets together. You all sit down over Discord or at the table, however you're playing.
Yeah.
And the DM will run a session 0, which is character building, rolling your stats, doing your backstory. The DM will explain to you what to expect from the campaign. Like, we're going to do a lot of role playing, we're going to do a lot of combat, I'm going to try and do a 50-50 mix of each to try and keep everybody entertained.
Yeah.
It is usually the best way to start a campaign so everybody gets comfortable and knows where they're going.
Yeah, definitely.
Then, depending on how much time is left, sometimes the DM will start into the campaign, do a quick little, like, here we go, this is what the first hour is going to be like, and get everybody comfortable.
Yeah. So, with that being said, you've got your stats now. You can allocate them where you want, or you can keep hold of them because you're looking at your character sheet. Character sheets look daunting, but trust me, they're not. They're very self-explanatory. Next, I believe you're going to then move on to your race. You have a multitude of races and different subtypes of those races. For now, I'm just going to go into the ones that are in the player's handbook, or we're going to go into the ones that are in the player's handbook. There is more out there in different books.
Such as Vorlor's, for example. Vorlor's Guide to Monsters has additional races, but we're not going to touch them. This is we're just covering the basics, so it's going to be what you can get in the PHP.
Beginner. Yeah. So you've got human, you know, like you and me. You have elves, which spread down to I think you've got wood elf, high elf, and dark elf.
That is correct.
Each of them have their own specific things, which are fully explained in the book.
Yeah.
You have the tiefling, which is basically like a devil person. You've got your dwarves, your gnomes, and
halflings,
which are like half orcs and dragonborn. You take a look at them, look at the different subtypes of them. Oh, you also have half elves. I always forget half elves because I never touch them. But all of them have different bonuses. So, say for instance, if you pick a human, they've got two different things. You can have normal human or human variant.
Yes.
Now, normal human, you will get +1 to each one of your stats that you've already written down. Okay, so you've rolled your stats, got all them there. If you decide go right, I'm going to play a human, you'll get +1 to each stat. Or you can pick the variant and take a feat. But if you are a brand new player, personal suggestion is that you would just take the normal human, get your +1 to stats. We'll cover feats later.
Yes.
Dwarves, for instance, I believe they get a bonus to strength and constitution or wisdom. Wood elves, they get a bonus to dexterity and wisdom. So, you know, each one of them gets different things. And you can either go from a mechanical point or roleplay point of like, do I want to play a dwarf or do I want to play a human, or what is my character going to be?
Yeah.
You've got your stats. This is your starting point. What are they? With that out of the way, once you've picked your race, it's then on to classes. Chris, what are the classes?
Let's see if I can remember them all. You've got your fighter.
Yeah.
Which is just your bog standard warrior, sword and board up front.
Mm-hmm.
You have your paladin, which is like a fighter but with healing magic.
Yep, kind of.
In a sense. You've got your cleric, which is very similar to the paladin. They are well armored, have a lot of divine spells for healing or damage.
Yep.
You've got your ranger.
You've
got
Legolas, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. You've got a rogue. Sneaky, stabby.
Yep.
You have a wizard, which is a wizard. You've got a sorcerer, which is a wizard without the spell book.
Yep.
You have a warlock.
You do, yes.
Which, again, pretty self-explanatory. Evil, nasty, bad magic.
Yep.
You have your bard, which is your support class, basically.
In a sense, yep.
In a sense, they provide like inspiration and debuffs and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing at least one.
You're missing a couple.
I feel like I am. Barbarian.
Yep.
Which is your tank.
Yep.
Straight up, just your tank.
Big angry boys.
All I can think of off the top of my head is the 10.
Okay. monk
Monk,
which are it's kind of like fighter, but they do more things with their fists and hand to hand.
more martial arts, shall we say?
Yeah, and druid, who are people who use nature magic. I believe they're the only ones you missed off.
I will
Barbarian, monk, and druid.
quickly check.
A good shout. But whilst you're checking, so what it is, hopefully you start in your first game at level 1, because this is where things tend to get a bit more complicated, because each class lends itself to different things and different things that they can do and different things that they can branch off into. So when you hit 3rd level, you tend to get a not a multi-class, an archetype.
Which is a subclass of what you have chosen.
Yeah, so for
There are
instance,
only them in the PHP, by the way.
cool. That's good to know. So for instance, we'll take fighter, because as much as I will argue till the day I die that fighter is a complicated class and can be very versatile, it is also one of the easiest classes to follow, because there's no magic unless you go down one of them, one of the archetypes, and it's very much I run in, I hit this, I hit this, I hit this again, and I hit this again. So yeah, fighter. We're going to take fighter for this instance. Fighter was my first actual player character as well.
I think it was mine, actually.
Yeah. So as you say, it's one people tend to be drawn to in a fantasy setting. Who doesn't want to play a knight? You know.
Well, oh no, I was going to say something else. Ignore me. Continue.
Okay. So fighter, it'll tell you a quick build. And I know, like, people will be like, well, if I want to go into a longer build, honestly, you don't. Quick build is just what everybody uses, I believe. It's nice and easy, it explains. So at this point, you've got your race, so you're a human. Okay, you've got your stats, you're a human, you've +1 to all those stats, you're now a fighter. Fighter will tell you that the best things, that your main stats should be strength and constitution.
Correct. So, the quick build for a fighter is you want strength and constitution as your main stats. They are the two you want, the highest numbers you've rolled. They are the two you want the highest ones in.
Your bread and butter.
If that may,
Yeah.
So when you say you've rolled four 15s and 2 18s, you want the 18s in your strength and your constitution, and the 15s can be spread throughout the rest.
Yeah, definitely. Now, so what will happen?
It's strength or dexterity, depending on what weapon you want to use.
Yes.
And then it's your constitution or intelligence if you plan to play the Eldritch Knight, but that we'll go into in a little bit.
That goes further down the line where we're covering very basics. We would advise strength, constitution on this. Now,
high damage, high health.
Yeah. So what you've done, okay, you've taken your stats. Yep. You've put them into the boxes that are on the left-hand side of the character sheet.
Yep.
Okay. And then what will happen with those once you've got those stats is you will then determine modifiers. Now, the book does tell you exactly what those modifiers should be, so don't worry, you don't have to try and sit there and figure it out. My partner can work it out. It's something divided by something to get the number, and I don't understand
I'm not gonna lie, I don't have a clue what you're talking about right now.
So when you have your stats in the boxes,
you
then those stats, so like say for example a 15 equates to it's +2 +3 +2 +2. There you go.
Every 2 you get a 1. So 10 is a 0, 11 is a 0, 12 and 13 is a +1, 14, 15 is 2, 16, 17 is 3,
Yes.
18, 19 is 4, and 20 is 5.
Yes. Yeah. So obviously the higher your stats, the better your modifier. Now, with where was that? Yeah. So you've put them in. Okay. Now, as you can see, in class features, it says hit points. Okay. So you hit dice. That's just note down 1d10 per fighter level. When you go through the game, you will then start to understand what hit die do. It basically determines your health, and on things later on, you can use your hit die to get health back.
Yeah.
But it determines your health on leveling up. So, hit points at first level, as the book states, it's 10 plus your con mod. So, for example, say your con modifier is 12. No, not a 12, a +2. That's what I was aiming for.
Yep.
Your health then would be 12. See where I got 12 from?
Yes.
You'll
10
then
plus your con mod, and then every time you level up, you will roll a d10 and add your con modifier. So if you rolled a 4, and then you added the 2, you'd get an extra 6 hit points.
yes.
Or you can
Alternatively,
take the average, which for a d10 is a 6, and then add
yeah,
your con mod, which in this case we're saying is 2, which is then 8.
yeah, definitely. With that, you then get your proficiencies. So what proficiencies are is you are proficient in, so you can use these things well. With a fighter, you're good at using all armor, shields, and all types of weapons. I have kind of glossed over something though.
Yep.
Or kind of just skipped it out. It's your sub abilities on your character sheet. So you'll notice that you've got your 6 main stats where you've put your modifiers in. Okay, and then to the next, you'll see things like athletics, acrobatics, animal handling, and things like that. What they would do, okay, because I don't actually believe. Oh no, fighters do get skills. I'm daft. It's been a while since I've touched a fighter. You then have skills. Okay, you can be proficient in those skills also. So for fighter, it says pick 2 skills from acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, and intimidation, perception, survival. So you pick 2 of them, you'll see a little dot, black out the dot. Now, those sub skills, all of them, they'll be in brackets which main stat they equate to. So for the ones that you aren't proficient in, just put down, for the sake of it, the numbers, that the modifiers that are there.
So
The ones that you are proficient in.
let's say your charisma is a +1 modifier. In
Yeah.
intimidation, you'd put 1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you do that. And then if you look on the fighter page, it's got the proficiency bonus. So at first level, you've got a +2. What being proficient means is you add your modifier. So we'll take athletics, which is strength. Your strength is a +3. Okay, so you take that +3, you add the proficiency bonus for athletics because you're proficient in it. So whenever you're told to roll an athletics check, you then add 5 to whatever it is that you roll.
Because your proficiency bonus for the first few levels is 2, and then that gradually begins to go up as you level up.
Yeah, yeah. And then your saving throws also again equate to the modifier that's there, so you get a saving throw on each of them. With fighter, you're proficient in strength and constitution for the saving throws. And then it would just be onto equipment. Following that, so you get things such as you'll start with the following equipment. So you can either have chainmail or leather, or a longbow and 20 arrows, a martial weapon and a shield. Or
Just so
two
you know, that's chainmail or leather with a longbow.
Ah, I see. That
So,
makes a bit
so
more
it's
sense.
you've got an A or B scenario. You can have chainmail,
Yeah,
or you can have leather armor, a longbow, and 20 arrows.
yeah, exactly. Or you can just kind of talk to your DM and go, look, I want this as my starting equipment. Because there's been times where I've sat with you and I've gone, I don't want to wear chainmail or leather. I would like to wear like studded leather and I'm playing a fight or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Um,
If they always sit down and talk with your DM, because every DM is different. So
yeah,
your DM might let you have certain things
yeah,
that you're not meant to start with, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, definitely. And it's always down to player preference and DM preference. I'm not going to sit and go through the entirety of the fighter class.
No.
Basically,
We're just doing
it's
like first level basically
yeah.
to get you on your feet and to get
When
going.
one of the best things to do also is look at the table that is given on the second page
Yep.
of the, or sometimes it's even on the first page. No, you'll see it. It's the say for the fighter, it's got the fighter. It's a little table. It's got level, bonus, proficiency bonus, and features. So first level, you've got +2 to your proficiency. Your features are your fighting style and second wind, which are then explained. So fighting style, you can either be good at archery, defending, dueling, using a great weapon, being protective, or using 2 weapons. It's up to you. Make it to how your character
Yeah.
would be on that one.
Sit and read through them because they are fantastic for character building. If
Yeah,
if you're making a fighter and your fighter's really well trained in sword and shield combat,
yeah,
you're not going to go for great weapon fighting.
exactly. Yeah. Um, I mean, so I had a character, Arister, who was a fighter. He was sword and board, long sword in one hand, shield in the other. Um, and I took protection because it was very much like, these are my comrades, I'm going to protect them. Which on that one, when you have a shield, you can use a reaction to give the person attacking disadvantage, which is essentially that person has to roll 2 dice and they have to take the lower dice when they're attacking someone that's close to you,
Yeah.
sort of thing. It's yeah, it's very good for character building, not just mechanics as well. And then also you get second wind.
Which is great in a pinch.
Definitely, you use that hit die that we spoke about.
The
Uh,
1d10.
Yep. And plus your fighter level. So say you're level 1, you're getting hit. You've taken some damage. You go, right, I'm going to use second wind. You can only use this once.
It is
Uh,
a once per short rest, which is very
because
important. And
fighters get most things on short rests.
and it is only a bonus action, so you do not lose your turn in combat for using this.
Yeah, exactly. So you roll your d10, say you get a 4 plus your fight level, which is 1, you get 5 hit points back. So you heal 5 hit points. It's nice and simple. Fighter definitely is one of the more easier classes to go into. With that, once you've got your race, your stats, your race, and now your class, now you can move on to things like backgrounds. Now, you don't have to take these as gospel. Essentially, what it is, it gives you bonus things. I'm just trying to find the page to take an
Well,
example. 125. Cool. So I personally never really use backgrounds. I just kind of pick one that is closest to the backstory that I've given my character. It's just good to get extra
You get a little bit extra equipment or something, but
yeah, equipment, proficiencies, maybe even languages, and yeah. So take for instance the hermit. You get like a skill proficiency of medicine and religion. You're also then good at using herbalism kits. You can learn a language of your choice, and then you also get an extra 5 gold pieces. So and some more stuff. But if you say don't know about coming up with a backstory, these are also wonderful because you can roll
yeah.
and decide exactly, and you can let the book help you decide of what your
So
character is.
so again, using hermit,
Yeah,
you roll a d8 and it'll give life of seclusion. You roll a d8 and say you rolled a 6.
yeah,
I needed to commune with nature far from civilization. That's the reason for why you are a hermit.
yeah,
It's just
definitely.
small stuff like that. There's several tables, so you can got your life of seclusion, your personality trait, what your ideals are, what your bonds are, what your flaws are.
Yeah, and the book even states that you don't have to roll. So you can work with your DM to determine the exact nature of your seclusion, or you can roll on the table below to determine the reason. So yeah, you don't have to roll. To be truthfully honest, you don't. It's good to let your DM know about your backstory and what they were doing. So when you
Yeah,
pick one, make the suggestion to your dungeon master. Say, look, this is why he was a hermit, and then your dungeon master can go, right, cool. Why does he come out then? Um,
yeah,
and it's good to go through that. And yeah, it's just a it's just a neat little mechanic, and it gives you a little bit extra to work with.
yeah. It helps flesh out the backstory, but of course, if you're a very creative person, you don't need to choose a background. You don't need to
Yeah,
do any rolling. You can just make one up on the fly. Speak to your DM and be like, "Would this give me any extra equipment or anything?" And then
yeah,
they all go from there.
exactly. Yeah, because when it comes down to it, it it's your character. And I mean, I know for Adventurers League, it kind of has to be by the book. When you're just playing with a group of friends, like why not just make some stuff up and say, yeah, you know what, you get this as well. Um,
It's what we do.
yeah,
During my games, when Adam's made a new character or at the start of a campaign, Adam often inboxes me beforehand. He'll send me a message and he'll be like, "Can I have this?" And I'll look into
yeah.
it. If it's not too overpowered, then I'm like, "Yeah, sure, go for it."
Or because I've been able to do this a few times, if I can explain a good enough reason as to why I can have something that's overpowered and then promise not to use it to break it at early levels, I tend to be able to get it as well. But that's just your relationship with your DM.
Yeah, that is
um,
a level of trust that is earned over many years and many campaigns.
yes, definitely, 100%. Um, a tip for DMs though. Um, Starting a game, if it's your very first game and you're running your very first game and it's new players, 100% make sure you start at level 1.
Yes.
Now, we don't like starting at level 1, but
No.
we're experienced players.
We tend to start at level 3.
Yeah,
So everybody gets to choose the archetype because a lot of
yeah,
backstories is like, oh, I was a soldier for 10 years,
yeah,
and then they don't have what like the archetype, the subclass that they are
yeah.
because
Why
they're
would
only
this
level
soldier,
1.
this soldier who spent years and years studying magic, why can they not cast magic, i.e. the Eldritch Knight? And it's yeah. So if it's the very first game, certainly try to dial back backstories if it's your very first one and let the actual story be told
Yeah,
through levels 1 to 3 or even 5. Now, honestly, that is pretty much it for a beginner player. It's very self-explanatory. There is a whole equipment section. So in the say the fighter, for instance, you have you can pick chainmail. If you don't know what chainmail is, if you go to, I believe it's page 145 in the book, in the player's
Close.
handbook,
It is.
page 145. I'm looking at
Is it?
it's 136 on our PDF, but the actual page in the book is 145.
There you
It'll
go.
tell you about armor. So your character can use chainmail. Yeah. You'll see that it gives you an armor class, so that's your B hit bonus.
So in combat, the monster, the enemy, will have to roll a d20, and then they'd have a modifier to hit. So let's say it's 2, and they rolled a 10. They'd add the 10 and the 2 together, and they'd get 12.
Yeah.
If that is lower than your armor class, they miss.
Yeah. So in this instance, you're taking chainmail. Your armor class is 16. It's going to bounce off or it's going to miss completely, but it does give you a requirement of to what you need to be able to wear it. So chainmail is strength 13, but you do get disadvantage to stealth checks. There is a weight. If a DM is asking you to track weight, tell them I think they stink and they should probably go read a book or something. Or reevaluate things. I'm trying to be nice but horrible at the same time. Don't track your player's weight.
I don't do encumbrance as a DM. I don't track weight.
Same.
But at a certain point, there is a limit where I'm like, right, how are you carrying 64 swords?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. When it's beyond ridiculous, yeah, that's fair. But like characters, it's literally in his name. He's a fighter. He's going to be able to carry his chainmail and his shield and his sword. Like he's gonna be there. He's gonna be fine to do that. Like don't be that guy. Okay.
I will just say this because this is one that always trips us up when we're making a new character. At the bottom of all your stats on character sheet, you have passive perception. That is 10 plus your wisdom modifier.
Is it not plus your perception modifier?
I don't think so. I think it's your wisdom modifier.
That is fair enough. But yeah.
Because the PHB doesn't tell you, I don't think.
Let me figure that out. So
no, yeah, it's the it
plus
is
the perception score. Yeah.
So it's the wisdom modifier and proficiency if they're proficient.
Yeah, but if they're not proficient, then it's just wisdom.
As you've just seen, like always, it always trips us up when we're making new characters.
It really does. It's so wild though because I've never had a character myself have a passive perception higher than like 13.
No, I don't think I have.
Because I never put proficiency in perception personally, and I know I should, but I like playing the characters that don't notice too much.
Yeah, the silly characters.
Yeah, definitely, because I think that's just how we roll these days.
I do know that we said at the start you will have to spend money. You can get PDFs of the PHB for free,
but
if you just look
also,
for it. But having a hard copy book is so helpful.
Also, please note that just downloading a PDF without actually owning the book is stealing, and we are not condoning.
We do not condone. So look at it in your own leisure. Like we are. We haven't downloaded it. We're looking at it in a web browser.
Yeah.
But
we also own the actual books.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
We own a lot of the books. So look at it. Don't download it. If you can get it on your phone, at the game table, or if you're playing online, perfect.
Yeah.
But you will need to buy dice.
Yeah, you will need to buy dice. Dice are quite important. Preferably the whole. Is it called a polyhedral dice set? I think
Yes,
that's what it's called.
it
Yeah,
is.
you need a full polyhedral dice set, and trust me, one will never be enough.
No.
um, but judging by the fact that you're listening to us and you're wanting to get into playing D&D, you probably got some of them already. Or if you're playing online, I know Roll20 has dice built in
It
online.
does,
It's
yeah.
fine. D&D Beyond also has dice built in online, so there are things out there. D&D Beyond does have a free service to just use the core books. I believe it's the Player's Handbook, the
AMG and the Monster
Dungeon.
Manual.
Yeah, it's got them, so you can use D&D Beyond's free service to be able to use them. So it's always good. You can't really read through the books like you can if you actually have it. It's more so, like I said, very hand-holdy, but doesn't explain
Yeah.
everything in great detail.
So buy the books.
Mhm.
If you can use a PDF without downloading it, there you go. If you can take a
Yeah,
laptop to the game table, you're playing online, you're using your phone, and you can whip up the PDF, there
yeah,
you go.
you're
But
good to go.
having the book on hand is much easier because then
Definitely, yeah.
you can tab it and stuff if you need to. Like, okay, this is where my spells are. And you can put a little
Mhm.
sticky note in or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I
Two.
think that about covers players.
Yes.
If there's anything you want to know, ask us in the comments,
Yeah.
and
Um.
we will reply and answer that for you.
Yeah, we're kind of stupid at trying to explain things, but if people ask us questions, we are pretty decent at getting that sorted. Now, the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Dungeon Master's side of starting a game. Can I be honest with you, Chris?
Yep.
I have not read too much in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think I've glanced at it about 3 times in my entire being of being a DM.
So I read it a little bit when I was on holiday in Mauritius.
Yeah.
Again, it's more for. I don't think you're meant to sit and read it.
No, it's more for like references of how much things cost or how much or like what magical items what if you don't want to make up your own, especially as a first time
Yeah,
yeah, or even it's got certain teaches you how to balance combats as well
it does.
using
It's got it does have very handy things in there for you to use. So if you look at the contents, you've got traps, unusual environments, mapping dungeons, wilderness
yeah,
survival, mapping settlements, designing NPCs. It's got a lot of helpful stuff like that. Villainous class options, which is two extra subclasses for paladin and cleric that you can use as a villain. It has adventure structures,
yeah,
pantheons to help you build your gods and goddesses.
yeah,
Siege weapons. It's got a lot in here, but the majority of it is for glancing. So if somebody goes, "Oh, I fire this cannon," you can open the contents, go to siege equipment, page 255, and find out what damage a cannon does.
yeah, exactly. um it's
It gives you a
it's
bit more detail on the planes as well. So
yeah.
the astral plane, the Feywild, the Nine Hells, the
Mhm.
prime material plane, which is where the campaign, for the most part,
Tends to
assumedly,
take place.
will take place.
Yeah. It like you said, it's very much good for glancing. Now, the tools that you, as a DM, what you will really need, especially for a first time runner. Now, obviously, we've touched on it before. You can take, especially for the first game that you're running, what's it called? A module. You can run a module, and that has the story, the encounters, characters, the world, all
Yeah.
built in and laid out. Or if you're more of a free thinker, all you really need is your imagination. Grab yourself a monster manual. Make sure you're looking at the monsters, and remember that your party is probably low level, especially if it's your first game.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of have fun with it. Really, especially a first level dungeon master. It's got tips on how to run combats
It does. It
in the Dungeon
has
Master's Guide.
it has sizes as well. So if you look at a monster manual and you see that something's size is huge,
Mm,
it has it'll pictures of like a little grid to show you how much of the
yeah,
gridded player map they would take up in comparison to a human,
yeah,
which is normal sized, I think it is.
yes, yeah,
And then it also has a like height chart to show you how tall they are next to said human, which can be
yeah,
really good if you want to use an ancient red dragon, but
mm,
you don't have a miniature that size.
yeah,
It can be like, this is how big it actually is. This is how much it takes up.
yeah, definitely. Um, Honestly, the best part of the Dungeon Master's Guide for a first time DM is going to be Chapter 8, running the game. Table rules, roll up the dice, using ability scores, exploration. It just gives you the rundown as to how the game
Yeah,
works. Because as a dungeon master, unfortunately, it is your job to keep hold and of the mechanical side of things, of how things work, why are players rolling dice, what do those dice rolls mean. However, one of the fun parts is you get to pick a number in your head between 1 and 30. When a player says that they want to do something, obviously the lower the number, the easier it is. The
yeah.
higher the number, the harder it is for them to do. And go, okay, cool. This is the number in my head. You don't say it out loud to them. Go, make me an athletics check, and if they beat it, you go, cool, success. If they don't, well, they fail.
A very common rule for DMs, for those who are new at
Mhm.
DMing, meets it, beats it.
Yeah.
So if your DC is a 15, your difficulty check is a 15,
Hmm.
and they roll a 15,
Yeah.
they beat it.
Yeah. They do.
Now,
They beat
one
it.
fun thing you can do with this is, depending on how much they beat it by,
Hmm.
is how you can explain it. If your DC is a 15 and they roll a 15, you can explain that they struggle and it's the item they're trying to lift is heavier than they thought it was going to be. They
Yeah.
struggle, but they managed to get it up.
Yeah.
Or if they rolled a 25, it's like when you go to pick up an empty box, but you think it's got something in and you just yeet it across the room.
Yeah.
So you
Definitely.
can have fun with how much they beat a DC by.
Yeah, like one of my things in, I know it's not Dungeons and Dragons, but in Cyberpunk, the game that I'm running, one of the things that I do is if they beat it by more than 5, something cool, like something really cool happens. But if they fail by more than 5, then something pretty bad happens. And it's you could even implement that into D&D, I think, because it does work. And I mean, it's not an actual written down rule, but if they roll a 1, it's a fail. And if they roll a 20, it's a pass. Unless it's ridiculous, like a gnome uprooting a tree.
Yeah,
Yeah, then it's like not even a natural 20 will do that.
yeah. How is this 2 foot tall thing pulling out a tree?
Yeah, it's
But
things like that. Question.
what new DMs need to know is there is a absolute plethora of DM resources out there.
Hmm.
So you have countless adventure modules that are
Yeah.
done by Wizards of the Coast that you could run your
Yeah.
party through, and they all take place in the same world.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you're using the same party, they can gain infamy or fame through these adventures. So when they finish one module and they go to the next, they can be like, "Oh my god, you're the people who did such and such."
Yeah.
Um, you could make your own. There are maps. I'll put a link in the description for what
Yeah.
I use, which is called Asgard Maps,
Yeah.
which creates a whole world for you on there, and then you
Yeah.
can tweak it how you want.
I used something called Incarnate if you are looking for something a bit more in depth.
Yep, but that one
Um,
lets you make the map. You draw it.
yeah.
You place the
Yeah.
cities where you want. Asgard does all that for you. You
Yeah.
can rename it and stuff, but Asgard also has things. So if you click on a city in Asgard,
Yeah.
and then it'll take you to another place, which will give you a map of that city.
Yeah. Also,
If it has a dungeon on, it'll do one room dungeons, so it'll take you to another website that'll generate a dungeon map for you,
yeah.
which
Also,
you
there
can.
is.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Um, sorry. Yeah. There's some things out there as well. There's a guy called DM Dave. If you give a quick search on Patreon for DM Dave, he puts out free like one-shot modules for low-level or high-level parties. They are free. They are great starting points because there's no specifics on the world, just kind of a quick story to run through. And I've had a look at the low-level ones and the starter ones, and they are top-notch and brilliant for brand new players. And that's the only time I'm going to shout out DM Dave because I don't actually know him.
There you go. Free shout out for you, Dave. And then you've got yeah, so you can generate dungeon maps online and things.
Yeah.
There's maps in the back of the DMG for dungeons and stuff.
Yeah.
There is plethora of resources out there.
Yeah,
The
there
thing
is.
that you need to know as a DM is you are the peacekeeper at the table.
Mhm.
So if anybody has any issues with another player, it is on you to sort that out. You need to try and keep the peace so that everybody's happy. You need to try and make yourself available so that if something's happening in the game that people aren't okay with,
Yeah.
they are comfortable to come to you
Yeah,
and express it to you
definitely.
for you to try and fix. They're putting this in work in terms that you're sort of the manager
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you need to look after your crew and make sure that everybody's having fun. Being a DM, I personally love it. I'd rather
Mm.
DM than be a player.
I'm the opposite. I'd rather be a no. I won't go into that because that's a whole thing. I'd rather be a player that is on the side of the DM, if that makes sense. So I can then help fill in the blanks for the
Yeah,
DM.
but when it comes down to it,
Mm.
the DM, you are the law and order of this table because you're the DM. People look at you for rulings and that type of thing.
But also don't be offended if a player comes to you and says, look, I'm not happy with the way you're running this. Take it as constructive criticism.
Hmm.
I mean, I know you, for instance, you take everything on board as constructive criticism and
Yeah.
you wouldn't be offended if someone came up to you and said, look, maybe
Well,
this isn't working and I'm not
if
happy with this.
yeah, if somebody comes up to me like that, I want to know why they're not happy and what I can
Yeah,
do to fix it without compromising, air
yeah,
quotes here, my
yeah,
campaign, for lack of a better term.
yeah,
So if somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'm not having fun with the way this is ran,"
yeah,
I'll sit down and work with them and be like, "Well, why aren't you having fun? What is it about this aspect that you don't enjoy?" And then see if I can
yeah,
rectify that for the next time. And
exactly.
if they're still not having fun, then hell, they're still not having fun. They,
Then maybe it's time to part ways
Yeah,
with that player.
but
It happens.
that's for later.
Yeah,
Beginning
definitely.
as a DM, all you really need to be is be creative,
Hmm.
have friends. I say have
Oh.
friends. That's not what I mean, but like have a group.
Yeah, have a group.
Have a
Get
group ready to like sit down and want to play.
even if it's just 2 or 3 players. That's all.
Yeah.
You could try running it for one person, but um, maybe I'm not too sure.
So have like be creative, have a group,
Mhm.
have the modules if that's what you want to run,
Yeah,
or have your own world. Do a bit of planning. I know
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I don't plan anymore.
yeah. I
But
well, I do, but I don't.
when I started this campaign, I
Mhm.
would finish a session and then go straight into writing for the next one.
Yeah,
I don't do that
and
anymore, but if you start with that, then you can go into the whole improvisation bit.
but that is the thing. Over time, you will start to learn your group, and
Yeah,
then you'll leave it at a certain point where you can then just go on to doing other things
I've
and letting the group kind of really take control. Because if you're a new DM with new players, that group is going to be quite apprehensive to doing anything.
yeah,
So
you need to kind of
it,
like nudge them a little bit.
yeah, it is unfortunately your job to nudge them and let them know, like push them in the right direction. Sorry, I just moved my arm a bit too much there.
So as a DM, if you're making your own campaign, your own world, be
Mm,
creative, have a bad guy, have a motivation for the bad guy,
yep.
and then have why the players should be invested in stopping this bad guy.
Yeah. Even
Why?
if it starts in a tavern and a guy comes up and goes, "Got a job for you lot."
Yeah, you look like a hearty bunch of mercenaries. Are you willing
Yeah,
to make some coin? Because if there's
yeah.
one thing that motivates players in D&D, it's gold.
It's gold. Yep, it is gold.
Because then they can buy magic items, and with
Yeah,
buying magic items, they become power. But do your
yeah.
research. Make sure you're not giving them overly powered magic items.
And you'll go through the Dungeon Master's guide, and you'll see a thing called the Deck of Many Things, which I think me and Chris will get into at a later stage, at a later episode. Don't give a first level party the Deck of Many Things.
Don't give
Uh,
a 20th level party the deck of many things.
just stay away from the Deck of Many Things
Yeah,
unless you really trust your players.
unless you either really trust your players or you're doing a meme campaign,
Yeah,
like a little
definitely.
memey one shot.
Yeah. The last thing I want to touch upon for new DMs as well is experience points. Um, I know RPGs and stuff like to just throw things out and go, oh yeah, if you kill this, you get this much experience. Personally, I stay away. So the first game I ran, I used experience points because that's what it said to do. And your party tends to become unbalanced, especially if you've got like predominantly um a class that isn't like the damage dealer, shall we
Yeah,
say? And it's a support class, and then the way it's explained in the book isn't perfect with the way that balancing your party. You and me both now use milestones. So when
yep.
when the party gets to a certain point in the game, um, just say right, it's time for you to level up, and then
Oh, hey, you beat this little mini boss. Have a level.
yeah, everyone can level up, sort of thing. Don't give out individual experience points.
No,
Uh,
it's
it's personal preference. If that's what you want to do, obviously go for it. But
yeah.
it does get
I personally hate experience points in D&D. I don't think it's done very well. I
it
don't think
also
it's
yeah
optimized great.
no it also so the issue I had was my party because I was a brand new DM. I was brand new at D&D. I was given the experience points to the person that killed the creature, and then that caused in a conflict within the party of when they got into fights. They were all optimized for just doing as much damage as possible, and then they were fighting to see who would get the kill. To when
Now,
I had an NPC kill the creature, I was literally told, great, the NPC's just gone and got all the experience, and that's where I went, this isn't right.
now there are ways of doing experience, giving it out in different ways. So, if somebody role plays particularly well and does fantastic, you can reward them with XP if they do something that is very true to the character or goes against the character, but it's like character progression,
Development.
character
Yeah,
development. Yeah, you can give XP because I do milestone leveling. I don't do
yeah,
that. I do inspiration. So if somebody does that, I'll give them a D10 inspiration, which is
yeah,
something extra they can add on to their D20 roll if they think they roll a 15 and they're like, oh, that's
yeah,
not going to make it. They can roll, they'll have inspiration that they can use.
yeah.
But there is fantastic resources out there for DMs. I know we're not going into
Definitely.
being a new DM as much, but I don't
Yeah,
feel personally like there's as much to talk about.
yeah. More so with the DM, it's a case of just let your creativity run wild.
Yeah,
Be the story. I don't want to say storyteller. Be the narrator to the story that is being told with your
yeah.
players. Um, See what is going on and try and tailor the game to the players themselves.
And
Uh,
please try not to railroad your campaign.
Yeah, because you might have a brilliant idea in your mind, and your players might not catch on and go a completely different way. And honestly, that's one of the best things to do. Let them go a different way. Come up with stuff on the fly. Just like, well, you're over in this area. I didn't plan, but here we are.
And if you are struggling to come up with, like, again, quote unquote quest ideas,
mm,
you gave a shout out, so I'll give one. There's a guy on TikTok called DM Inspo.
yeah,
Go watch him. He does his TikToks aren't very long, and they are great ideas for uh,
definitely.
starting quests and getting your party invested and giving them a hook per se.
Yeah, there is more things out there for DMs than there is players.
I agree.
Us, yeah, and the D&D community themselves. Even if you just jump into a D&D Facebook group, there's people on those. Hell, you might even run into one of us. That if you go look, I've got this idea. How do I bring it to fruition? People will jump on with all of their great ideas, and it's a good networking and good way to discuss things and get
And
more experienced minds on
and
that
again,
in those.
that's also something you can ask in the comments if you watch the
Yeah,
YouTube video,
yeah,
the YouTube podcast. Something you can watch in the comments.
yeah. If you're listening on Spotify, if you do have a question, just jump onto YouTube. Don't have to listen to it again. Just throw a comment in there, and we'll be right on to answer.
But
Um,
I do find starting as a DM is easier, which is why we haven't gone into as much detail. There's not as
yeah,
much to cover because you don't have to do any character building or anything like that.
yeah,
The majority of your NPCs you don't need stats for, only your
yeah,
BBEG, like your bad guys, most of
yeah,
which will be either in the monster manual or I know the PHB's got a few NPCs in the back. The only one you
yeah,
really need to modify the stats for is if you homebrew a bad guy.
yeah. And even then, your party's not going to fight them in the in the first session or the
Exactly.
first few sessions. That's
So,
going to be down the line when you've got a little bit of experience behind you with running that. Um, and
but
even then, you don't even need to write it down. Make it up as you go along. Lord knows
exactly.
that's what I do.
I was
I
about to
came up
say
with
the
it.
exact same thing.
Yeah, like I made an entire city mimic, and didn't even write down a single stat, and I just rolled dice and went with it.
And with that being said,
Hmm.
I hope that covers at least the basics for starting.
Definitely. If you feel that we missed anything or you want us to go into depth with more things, please comment or send us a message or something along those
If you
lines.
just want a bit of clarification,
Yeah,
like
we've been doing this for a little bit, so I like to think that we have an idea of what we're talking about.
like I said last week, I believe me and you roughly combined about 10 years experience.
Yeah, thereabouts. Yeah,
So again, if you need clarification for anything, whether it be Player's Handbook, DMG, Monster Manual, if you do happen to have any of the extra books, such as Volos or Mordenkainen's,
the expansions and add-ons to the 3 core books, they're great. They're wonderful. Have a read. There's a lot of reading in D&D.
but it's all worth it.
Definitely, you get to play this wonderful game that we all love and enjoy.
But I think that covers this week. So
Yeah, I've always wanted to say this. Hit that bell.
hit the bell for notifications.
Yeah, do that one.
If
Um,
if you are listening to this and you know D&D and you know somebody who might want to try and get into it, share the episode with them.
yeah, do that.
If you know anybody who is interested in D&D at all and wants a D&D podcast to listen to, share the entire channel with them. We are on
Yeah,
Spotify and YouTube.
yeah. We're just 2 dudes rambling about a game that we love,
If
and
you hadn't noticed.
yeah, it's good fun, and D&D is good fun, and we appreciate everyone that listens.
And I think we will see you in a week.
In a week's time, tatty buys.
Bye.